Hello. Have you had thoughts about a home business that involves selling meat or muscle food products? I'm Byron Williams, Associate Extension Professor of Muscle Foods with the Mississippi State University Extension Service in the Department of Food Science, Nutrition, and Health Promotion. In the following slides, we will discuss some facts related to starting a home business selling meat or muscle food products. I hope that you find this information valuable as you consider this type of business venture. There are four main objectives that we hope to accomplish with this video. One is to obtain knowledge of selling meat food products and the legalities involved with that. The processing choices that you have, both the product as well as facilities. Thirdly, to learn some basic sales facts and basic economics that are involved when you start processing and selling meat as a business. And lastly, to learn some of the options that you have that will be most likely to help your business succeed, and also that fit your desires in your particular operation. There are some very basic questions that need to be answered at the very beginning planning stages or even the thought process of this type of business. One is, what products and what types do I want to sell? Is it beef, pork, lamb, veal, goat, or maybe something else? Then where and to whom do I want to plan to sell my product? Is it to individuals or groups or retail stores, maybe restaurants directly, chain stores, warehouses, or maybe some other ventures? Then how do I plan to sell my product? Is it whole or portions of carcasses? Is it live animals that I'm selling to individuals who then have them further processed for their own use? Or is it selling individual cuts or packages of products? And are they fresh or frozen? Maybe even consider some other further processed products such as ground meats or sausages. And certainly lastly, but most importantly, what are the legal requirements? Are there various approvals or licenses that I have to have, and what are the parameters involved in selling this type of product? Another thought that we must have or consider, as not listed here, is transportation means, and that depends upon where you're selling and what types of products, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in the presentation. There are various most common types of muscle foods that can be sold legally within the state of Mississippi as well as most other states. And these include beef, pork, goat, sheep, poultry, to include chicken and domesticated turkey, and some other specialty species like rabbit, duck, geese. But these each have specific and different requirements as well as poultry. And due to the length and complexities, we will not discuss those species within this particular presentation. The Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFRs as we call them, are the laws that govern the entire United States. And in that, it states that all beef, pork, sheep, goat, equine, sold to consumers must be processed under the parameters of inspections by the United States Department of Agriculture Food Safety Inspection Service, is abbreviated by USDA-FSIS, and or the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, as we refer to it as MDAC as an acronym. And there are a lot of acronyms that you will run across in the meat food business, and some are easy to understand and others are not. But the key statement here is that any meat product that enters or re-enters commerce must be under the parameters of inspection as set forth by the CFR. Now, I mentioned in this law there's a statement there about equine. And yes, equine can be sold and equine are eaten, not in the United States. They are not legal to sell in the United States, but they are legal to sell them to foreign countries that allow their consumption. So to reiterate the important questions to answer before any final plans are made. Again, what do I want to sell? Where do I want or plan to sell this product? To whom do I want to sell it? And how do I want to do that? So we want to, as you explore these various parameters, may cause you to make some adjustments or change your plan slightly within your business plan. So let's explore further some of those options and parameters that are involved in selling meat food products that will help you fine-tune your plan before actually getting started. The options of processing facility types offers some different parameters for selling meat products. The types are according to the license that they are granted by the United States Department of Agriculture. Each type facility submits a request for approval to operate, and if approved, they're granted a license, if you will, or a grant of inspection as it's called. And we'll discuss the types of those a little bit later. But the types options are available, and they're all available within Mississippi, are custom, state, TA, or Talmadge-Aiken, if you will, and federal plants. We'll discuss very briefly some of the differences and options afforded by each in some of the subsequent slides. All meat, poultry, and catfish products entering commerce must bear the mark of inspection. The basis for the regulations and requirements for both USDA and FDA jurisdiction are all found in the CFR in Titles 7, 9, and 21. Now, Title 9 will be the primary title that will be involved in selling animal or animal-type products. Some of the most pertinent regulations with their direct links are listed here on this slide. Feel free to copy and paste those in your browser or retype them in, and it will take you directly to those particular CFR regs. Some of the regulations are quite extensive and can be a bit cumbersome to follow until you become accustomed to the methodology of how they're written and how they flow from one to the other, and as well as the legal terminologies that are used within them. The inspection legends are the same for most of the red meat species, but different for poultry and specialty species, as well as equine. The inspection marks appear on the carcass or the wholesale cuts from the carcasses, as well as all printed materials like product labels or boxes, and the other type packages that serve as a primary package for the product. These marks of inspection are evidence of inspection by the property authorities and allows those said products to be sold in retail or wholesale or farmers markets to individuals. That means that they can be exported if under the certain parameters for export markets. This is an example of an inspection legend that would appear on printed boxes, labels, or printed films or other primary packaging materials. Each processing facility has its own unique establishment number that allows the product to be identified as coming from that particular facility that it was processed and packaged in. You'll notice here that number is 38 here following the abbreviation EST, which stands for establishment. This is an example of a stamp that would be placed on individual carcasses and cuts, which uses an edible ink, usually a blue ink, as most commonly seen. This legend is for poultry only. Poultry carries a letter P before the establishment number to denote that it is a poultry product. For states that have a state and poultry meat inspection system, the legend carries an insignia of the geographic outline of the state, as you see here. This is an example of a state inspection legend for a facility in Mississippi, and is administered by the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, the Meat Inspection Division within that organization. You will see that there's a number. This number is not a federal number.
and it allows for the sales within the boundaries of that particular state. Here, as you see, it's for Mississippi, and establishment number is 86, administered by the Department of Agriculture and Commerce, and it allows for sales only within the boundaries of the state, and we'll discuss those differences a little bit later. There are numerous means that meat inspection utilizes to protect the consuming public, and that's the main function of meat inspection. It actually begins with the live animal, and it progresses throughout the food chain all the way to the outlet where the consumer purchases the product and carries it home. But the main functions of inspection are to preclude diseased animals from entering the human food chain, assure that they are processed humanely, they're processed in clean and sanitary facilities, and that they're not adulterated or contaminated with any deleterious substances, and that they are labeled properly. If the product passes all the parameters of the inspection laws, then they can carry the inspection insignia and enter into commerce. The law that's the basis for all meat inspection comes from the Wholesome Meat Act of 1967 that established that all inspection systems must be at least equal to, I reiterate that, must be at least equal to, and is now called the Federal Meat Inspection System based on this Wholesome Meat Act. That means that all requirements must be at least equal to the federal standards. Now, the Mississippi Meat Inspection Act is based upon that law, and it's certainly equal to the FMIA, or the Federal Meat Inspection Act. A state can enact laws or requirements above or beyond those of the Federal Meat Inspection Act, but they cannot be less than. The plant categories, according to the levels of inspection and the associated parameters, that begin with custom plants. These particular facilities harvest and process animals for individuals who own that animal. And within Mississippi, there can be no more than 4 owners per animal, or no less than a fourth of an animal is processed for the sole use of the owner, his family, or his non-paying guest. Animals are subject to both ante and postmortem inspection for disease detection and prevention within a custom facility. Some of the additional requirements under custom is that each finished package of custom product must be stamped with the phrase or words "not for sale" in a legible ink print on the package. It means this product cannot be sold whatsoever. It also cannot be commingled with public or for sale products for public sales at any point during the processing. They can be processed in the same facility, but custom products can be processed on a separate day from those that are for sale, or at the end of the shift and just not commingle. Now, there are some custom plants that do both retail exempt products under inspection as well. The next category is state plants. These facilities operate under the at least equal to federal regulations, and they carry all the same requirements and parameters of food safety as other federal or TA plants. These facilities are inspected daily by state inspection personnel within the Department of Agriculture and Commerce of the state. The major difference is that products bearing state marks of inspection or processed within a state plant can only be sold within that particular state. It cannot be sold across state lines or transported across for further sales. Now, if an individual or an end consumer buys some product at a state plant that sells retail products, they can buy that product and then take it home, which may be across a state line, but he or she may not take that product and sell it back into commerce. Plant inspection is Talmadge Aiken plants. You might wonder, how in the world did it come upon that particular name? And there was an amendment made to the Meat Inspection Act that classified this particular category, and it was then named after those two senators, Talmadge and Aiken. This particular law allows for state inspection personnel to carry out the day-to-day inspection duties within these particular plants, but they're under federal oversight. That allows the plants all the same privileges as a federal plant, meaning that the products can move within that state, they can move across state lines, and they can be exported even. So all the same requirements exist as federal plants. The only difference is that they are inspected by state inspection employees. But there are periodic reviews by federal personnel that come in to make sure that everything's at least equal to the federal parameter. In federal plants, they carry a federal grant of inspection. They are inspected strictly by federal FSIS employees. These and TA plants are under periodic inspection reviews, as I mentioned, by federal auditors for the Food Safety Inspection Service to review all the production records, all the food safety programs, and the paperwork that goes along with day-to-day production, as well as inspection of the facilities for sanitation and sanitary practices. The inspection costs are free up to 40 hours per week in these particular plants. Holiday and overtime rates are paid by the plant, requesting each operational times that happen to be on federal holidays or more than an 8-hour day. This is the same also in TA plants. So to remind us again, the overall goals and decisions that we need to make revert back to those basic questions that we outlined at the beginning of the video. The who and where to sell the product and what type product do I want to sell. Along with those answers, we need to develop a demand or a market for that product and have some basic understanding of some meat economics and sales procedures and processes, as well as standard processing procedures. To complement these and facilitate all the goals and objectives, one must have, and I reiterate must have, good communications and clear understandings with the processing facility and the personnel there from the very beginning of the live animal all the way to the finished product and ultimately to the customer or consumer. And certainly their desires are what we're after fulfilling to make sure that we're successful. Now, I wanted to mention just a little bit about beef, since it is unique due to some additional known health hazards that are associated with that particular species. Ultimately, those additional risks have resulted in additional inspection and safety measures that have to be taken with beef to ensure that it is safe and wholesome. It begins with age of animals, and in those that are 30 months of age or older have to be handled differently due to BSE, or mad cow disease, as it is known, and it's bovine spongiform encephalopathy. All beef, regardless of age, though, have to be treated with an antimicrobial step during the process, and that's to reduce the likelihood of E. coli contamination. This involves extra steps and some microbial testing of the carcasses throughout the process to reduce that potential for those pathogenic E. coli from entering the food chain. These additional steps during processing or antimicrobial steps are not required on other species, but they're certainly optional, and many people are doing those. But all species undergo some type of testing to include salmonella monitoring, and there are parameters that are established that each facility must operate within. Poultry has specific pathogenic organisms that are unique to that species. They have to be addressed as well. Pork and other species is no additional testing other than normal post-slaughter and routine testing and sampling at this particular time. Now, to address some of the basic economic and sales parameters we need to establish before we get very far into our business plan. We must have a good idea of what the animal cost to purchase it or to raise that animal from the point of birth to the point of harvesting and processing into meat. That becomes our initial break-even cost. Then there are fees of slaughter and processing to consider, which will add to the break-even cost. The figures given in this slide are very average and approximate numbers that I have taken across a large, very wide range. So you may find some differences as you shop for different processors that offer their services. These figures, they will certainly vary from facility to facility and depend upon the extent of the processing of the products that you are desiring. Certainly yields are probably the greatest factor in changing the break-even cost. The carcass, or what is left after the initial dressing procedures, is considerably less than the live animal weight, and in a lot of cases almost doubles the break-even cost based upon the resulting hanging weight of the carcass. Then, depending upon how much further processing is done, in other words, making it into the various cuts, whether they're bone-in or boneless, will certainly change the weight. How close the fat trim or other trim for weight, etc. Then the amount of the product that is actually to take home or available to be sold is much less than the weight of the live animal to begin with. Hence, these figures, or at least the close estimates, need to be established prior to you finalizing your business plan, including the finished selling prices. Now, I mentioned some figures here that, again, are basic average cost of slaughter, around $30. Some may be cheaper than that, from $20 to probably $50 a head. The same for processing, and that's based on a per pound basis of a carcass weight or some other parameter. So your processor will need to be discussed and certainly can assist you with some of these figures based upon their experience and practices. So you must consider also, depending upon the type sales you're considering, is you're selling individual types of meat cuts such as steaks and chops, maybe ground meat or roast. Keep in mind that steaks and chops are most likely the higher demanded items and will sell first, leaving you with the lower value cuts to deal with. And this is in the case where you are merchandising or processing whole animals into the final particular cuts and then selling the various cuts. So you need to have a plan to utilize and sell all the parts of the animal to be successful and profitable. And we'll discuss the differences on custom. If you sell a custom, then you're selling directly to the end user and they get it all. So that's a pro there, but we'll discuss that in more detail. It's somewhat unique in its processing parameters and is usually in more demand. It's a higher demanded species. It's more expensive in all respects, and the customers expect consistent high quality in the finished product. Beef, due to its age at harvest, the various feeding regimes, and the genetics involved are much more variable than any other species in the finished eating quality. Also affecting this is the methods and the types of consumer in preparation prior to consumption. So a lot more variability in beef. The types of inspection plants and the parameters associated with each must be considered in your plans, whether they're custom, estate, or TA, or federal plant. To highlight some of the pros and cons of the various types of processing inspection systems, let us first begin with custom. Custom plants have many of both pros and cons. Some of the pros are you have individual sales and a price arrangement with individual customization. You can have multiple customers or owners per animal, up to 4, as I mentioned earlier. You don't have any leftover cuts. You've got more availability of processors that are under the custom system, and usually fewer legal parameters are some of the main pros of custom processing. Some of the negatives are the time involved in making the individual sales arrangements and the processing parameters. Each person sometimes is a little bit different. Consistency from one customer to the next, and that plays a role particularly if you have more than one customer splitting a carcass. That the different types and desires of their particular cuts need to match fairly close. The timing of the customer desires, the product availability, and the processor timing and availability to actually process. The amount of money to purchase that quantity all at one time and the volume of storage needed to hold that product by the end customer are some additional drawbacks to this method of the meat selling business. State inspected facilities and processing under state plant parameters have both positive and negatives as well. This method certainly opens up the options to sell individual pieces and into various markets, including retail, wholesale, farmers markets, and others, all still within the confines of that particular state. It also gives customers the assurance that that product was processed under federal guidelines for food safety concerns and that it is labeled properly and accordingly. There are some drawbacks of some additional costs and testing requirements and the various age parameters involving the older animals of beef, but those are usually fairly minor. TA or Talmadge-Aiken plants have all the same requirements as state plants and offer the same positive aspects, except that the sales parameters are opened up much more to include going across state lines and even to export potentials. There's some similar concerns of testing and associated costs involved that exist in both TA as well as state plants. There are fewer of these type facilities within Mississippi, as is the case with most states that do not have major beef finishing operations. There are numerous custom plants across Mississippi as well as most other states, and you can contact any of the people on the information slide at the end of this presentation to find out more specifics about where those custom facilities are located. But there are currently 5 facilities that are under inspection for beef slaughter. One is state only. There are 4 others, with 3 of them being Talmadge-Aiken or TA and 1 federal. So a total of 5 as it exists now for beef. All of those plants also do pork as well. To sell into the retail and wholesale markets, meaning that products will re-enter commerce, also included farmers markets or other avenues. All these products must have been inspected and passed by the respective regulating authority. We've reviewed some of the main pros and cons of the various type facilities and those inspection parameters involved. I mentioned earlier about transportation of the product in commerce being a point to consider, and that requires a refrigerated vehicle that is equipped with a permanent refrigeration device, similar to what you see on the hot roads and highways of the reefer units on transport trucks. There are small-scale units, either motorized or trailers with a permanent refrigeration unit on there that can be approved and by USDA or MDAC as well. Ice chests or freezers or refrigerators that are hooked up to generators on trailers or in the back of trucks are not allowed. There started out being some major issues of food safety concerns there, so they have been outlawed. You must have good producer, processor, and customer relations and requirements. You've got to have a clear understanding of all of those requirements, and they've got to be essential to have a solid, profitable, and sustainable business operation. Each product quality, or the end product quality, as well as accurate labeling, are also non-compromising for a successful meat business. And for fresh meat, you must have a safe handling statement that makes references to temperatures and cooking parameters involved. So in summary, the type sales you desire is certainly necessary to determine before pursuing any other aspects of your business. Individual sales via custom processing, or whether you want to expand into retail or wholesale or farmers markets or other venues. Keep in mind, whatever, you must have a consistent demand and consistent quality of the product, particularly in retail and wholesale, whether you're entering interstate or intrastate to sustain that business viability. So explore your potentials with your various area processors, retailers, and wholesalers, and develop that market in general before you finalize any plans. Questions you need to ask: do the economics work for what I want to do, and can I make it work with my particular processor or producer or customers, and are the relations satisfactory? With these facts and figures, do the inspection laws and other requirements fit my business plan? Or can I make them work or adjust my plan to fit the various parameters? Then, as you seek the various processing facilities or plants that you want to work with to work out and further discuss the details, you might find that you want to tweak some of your plans or maybe make some changes or use a different approach. But all of those type things kind of come together to making that final plan. The sources listed here for clarification or specific questions, any of these contacts myself, Byron Williams, my colleague, Dr. Courtney Christ, within the Department of Food Science, Nutrition, Health Promotion, or if you want to talk to Dr. Benton, who is the Director of the Mississippi Department of Ag and Commerce Meat Inspection Division. Or if you have some general questions and you want to do it anonymously or even otherwise, you can certainly contact USDA FSIS. They have a very small plant help desk that fields questions either verbally or submitted online. Well, I hope that you found some of this information beneficial to you, but if we can help you in any way, please don't hesitate to contact us. And I wish you good luck with your pursuit in becoming an entrepreneur, and thank you for your interest in this topic. The Food is a Business seminar series is sponsored by the Mississippi State University Extension Service, the Southern Extension Risk Management Education Center, and material is based upon work supported financially by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Thank you.